First thing that comes to mind.
Death.
Future.
There's never enough money in my bank.
What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word fear?
Fear?
First thing that comes to mind.
Fear. Nothing. I wouldn't stop what I want to do because I'll be fearful.
Future. Because I don't know how it will go. I don't know what's happening in the future. It's like unknowns.
Fear is absence of love. And I would also say that fear is a barrier to a lot of things that you can accomplish in terms of your goals or anything in life.
I guess it can range from anything, like, you know, small fears or your fears about future or your profession or anything like that.
The fear, I'm 63, so the fear of the future, financially, you know, I will have a small pension, so I will lose my salary. So the fear of being poor, paying my bills, the fear of health. You know, you hear, you know, when you get to your 60s, 70s, 80s, cancer, heart attacks, all that kind of thing.
Death. Yeah, I'm like, fear equals death, scared.
Being scared, like certain things.
It's the only thing I'm scared of, that's why.
A lot of things. Being in a foreign country for me is fear. You know, the fear of missing my people, the fear of losing my people. You know, when you're working, there's a fear of not being successful. You know, as a student right now, for me, the fear of making myself or making my life out in the future.
Fear of getting old.
Pigeons.
I don't like pigeons.
Pigeons.
You're afraid of pigeons?
I didn't tell my parents. I quit my job and I pretended to go to my job for over, I think it was over a month and a half, 2 months.
Scandal.
So I used to leave at like 7:30, 8.
What's everyone scared of?
Spiders.
Okay, I can get with that.
Dogs.
Really? Sorry.
No, I can understand it. Yeah.
No, do you know what it was? I watched this thing on Instagram yesterday.
No, you're not nice.
And it was like, tag a dog hater. And it's this dog, you know, and it like shows its teeth and it was but to be fair, I was scared and I was so close to tagging this.
Right.
Sorry. Anyway, so when you said dog, I was like, oh. So it's triggered.
Not sure, you know. Wasps?
Mum was
Maybe
scared of
wasps.
wasps.
Yeah.
Pigeons.
I don't like pigeons.
Pigeons.
You're afraid of pigeons?
Confession. When I was younger, in my before Christ days, I used to kick after them because I really didn't like them. And I'm convinced they told their ancestors to look out for me because ever since I used to kick after them, they used to swoop by me. But I'll never forget once a pigeon, the wing skimmed my face. I kid you not. The pigeon went, shh, and no.
I don't
don't like pigeons. They freak me out.
Yeah.
What are you afraid of? Scared of?
Bugs.
Bugs?
Insects.
Yeah.
I can understand.
That's Josh.
Pumpkin. Can't roll with that, man.
I can't quantify that.
Bugs and insects.
Yeah. I'm not scared, but I don't really like, and they make me feel uncomfortable, animals in general. I can't watch animal programs, you know, like Blue Planet and stuff. It has to I'm being dead serious. It has to come off. If I walk in the house and Blue Planet's on, my family instantly know to turn it off. It makes me feel uncomfortable. Everything's crawly and
You're missing out, man.
oh god, no.
David Attenborough.
What else must
Voiceovers.
I'm afraid of spiders. Although I think I'm getting better.
No, I'm
The
not.
big ones will finish me off.
Yeah.
And
Fear.
I'm afraid of failing.
Oh, I was going to go there.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
I think I struggle with that sometimes, which is why sometimes I overcompensate by doing the absolute most out of fear that I'm going to fail.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Mine was not fear of failure, but I'm afraid of being let down, which is similar. But yeah.
Preach the truth, my
Is that
dear.
by
Sorry.
other people?
Yeah, by other people rather than myself. So I would rather do everything myself and do 100 jobs not badly, but to do 100 jobs over like a 4-week period than delegating them to people who will let me down in a couple of days or so.
So where do you think fear almost derives from?
Comes.
Experience? I don't know.
I think it's dangerous as well. If you think about children, babies, they're not really afraid of anything, are they? I think fear is a learnt behaviour, and usually, I guess back in the day, it was fight or flight sort of thing. So you knew if you're in danger, you need to just run. So fear is like, oh, I'm in
Or fight
danger,
it
so I
off.
need to get out of here. But with children, young children, they're not afraid of much. That's why I have to educate them and tell them, yo, you got to be careful. You know, you can harm yourself. Things are dangerous. So I think it's a learnt behaviour, personally.
So do you think it can be unlearned?
I was about to say, that was
Yeah.
my question.
I think this is a group conversation, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think yes. Phobias, I'm not too sure about. I think they can be unlearnt, but they're probably different sort of techniques because phobia takes it to a different complete place. Like, I've got a friend that is afraid of heights, will not get on a plane, won't go up a stairs, won't go up an escalator, none of that. Not one thing. I've got another friend that is afraid of spaces, if that makes sense. So she's like in a closed space, she just can't be in it. She can't go in an escalator. She just won't do it. So I guess it depends, doesn't it? It's irrational. Those sort of fears are irrational compared to when we're afraid and we're in danger. I think a lot of us have irrational fears that we need to work through and unlearn that behaviour.
I think that's interesting though, because sometimes I don't know if it makes sense, but there's like I have levels of fear. So even though I don't like wasps, but if I don't like them because they come into my room, and when they're in the room, I have to deal with it. So it's not like I can be like, like I'm the one that has to deal with it. So I gain enough almost courage to deal with it. Same with spiders. Like I don't necessarily like spiders, but I have to deal with them. So I have to do it. Yeah, and like when you go on like adventures and stuff, like I wouldn't say I'm afraid of heights, but when you're on these wobbly stuff, you kind of have to talk yourself into you're okay, like you're okay, like you're not gonna fall. So I don't know if that's mini fears or if that's just like like you're saying survival. If you're on a platform high up and it's wobbling, you probably something kicks in like this is your environment. Yeah, you need to like get down. Kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know if that's a load of mini fears or just like a general survival type instinct.
I feel like a lot of fears or the stem of fears, it's weird because I think a lot of it is learned. Like you said, you look at a baby, they're not scared of anything. But then some things, so like fire, that I suppose you're taught, that will burn you. So stay away from it. You should be scared if a fire's leaping towards you. If someone's running at you with a pointed, sharp object, you should be scared because that's your life. So I feel like a lot of them are in terms of survival instincts and protecting yourself. But then there's some where it can become really irrational and the fear overtakes you. And it's like drawing the line between it or what even causes that. Like,
do you know what's mad though? Even saying that, so if we're saying that fear is a learnt behaviour, we're learning fear or we are afraid of things because of those before us. Which is mad because essentially we could hinder, like I think to myself, like, so when I became self-employed, I didn't tell my parents. I quit my job and I pretended to go to my job for over a month and a half, 2 months.
Scandal.
So I used to leave at like 7:38. I used to drop my brother off at college because he used to go to college near where I used to work. To drop him off, he'd be like, "Are you going to work now?" I'd be like, yeah. Then go do my thing, and then come back and pick him up, and then go home. And I did it for like a month and a half. But I did it because I knew if I told my parents I left my job to become self-employed, they would fear that I'd fail, and that they would persuade me not to do it out of fear that I'd fail. So I almost had to go behind their back. I'm not encouraging anyone to do this, but like go behind their back to almost prove to myself that it was achievable so that I could then, and I think that's mad because what are we limiting ourselves to if we're picking up the fears of other people?
That's deep.
Like, do you know what I mean? As you were literally saying, like, we learn fear, I was like, but that's mad because if I would have learned maybe that, you know, unemployment was a bad thing from my parents, maybe I wouldn't be where I am today. Do you see what I mean? Or if you would have, perhaps if your parents would have told you that university wasn't a good thing, you wouldn't be a pharmacist.
It's true.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and I just think to myself, like, what we pick up, or I suppose the element of teaching people, especially if these things are learned behaviours, whatever we are teaching people is crucial and it's vital, because it will have an effect on who they are. Like, spiders, yeah, cool. Like, but when you actually start to deep it, like, I'm scared of things because my parents are scared of them. Well, I'm scared to succeed them because, you know, maybe the avenue my parents took compared to the avenue I'm taking, they fear that. And because of that, that could have hindered. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just think that's smart.
I think off the back of what you said as well, you have to be careful who you're learning your fears off. And it's not even to say, oh, everybody who's close to you, it's good to learn their fears. But you could learn or develop a fear of something that is completely irrational or completely irrelevant, and it limits you so much so. And you've just got to be really careful, because you could end up tiptoeing on eggshells around something that you've absolutely got no reason to be fearful of. Like, learned behaviour is dangerous depending on who you're learning it off, or what you're learning in that sense.
So is there anything else? So we've established, like, spiders, you know, animal, whatever. Like, in terms of, like, do you fear people?
In what
People,
sense?
and yeah, in which way?
I feel like in the sense of, like, you may not necessarily be, like, scared of people, but, like, okay, so let's say somebody publicly embarrassed you. You then in the future avoid them because of that embarrassment. Would you say that you're fearful of that individual? Do you see what I mean? You may have been hurt because of what they've done, but out of fear that they might do it again, are you then avoiding that individual? Do you see what I mean? Do we fear people for certain reasons?
I would probably say I more fear the judgment than the actual person.
Okay.
Because say somebody publicly embarrasses you, then that could develop fear, not maybe specifically of people, but of certain people's judgments and how you're perceived. So in one sense, yeah, I could say, not that I specifically fear people, but I fear the way I'm going to be perceived by people, definitely.
You know, this topic's really close to my heart, fear. And the reason why it's close to my heart is that I think for about a year, I'll say about 2 years, I was just living in fear. So the year between 2006, end of that, to 2008, January time, I had gone to college and I didn't really like it. It was like a sixth form. I hated it. It was awful. So I decided to go to a college in town. And it was good. It was going really well. Passed my AS levels. Fine. I was going into my A levels, the second part of it. And I woke up one morning. This is about January 2007. And I just couldn't get out of my bed. Like, I was afraid to get out of the house. Like, I tell you, it's not even a joke. Like, it's like this. It's so irrational. I couldn't leave my house. I just didn't want to leave my house. And I was like, have you gone mad? Like, what's wrong with you? And I couldn't explain why. And for about 3 months, I didn't leave the house. And at that point, my mum was getting mad now. She was just like, you haven't gone to college. You're not doing anything. You need to find a job. I said to her, I can't find a job. I can't do anything. I'm scared. And then one time she wanted me to go out. And I was like, I can't leave my house. I cannot leave. So about 6 months of January 2007 to June, I didn't leave the house. I didn't go anywhere, didn't see anybody, didn't do anything. And people started to think I was just going mad. And to this day, I cannot tell you what the problem was. I was just afraid to go outside. It's like something just came over me. And it's irrational when I think about it now, but it consumed me. And I think fear can do that. I think in your mind, that is where the battleground is in terms of whether or not you do or you don't. And fear can be so paralyzing. You know, we talk about how, you know, people are afraid to get into self-employment just in case it goes wrong, the fear of failure. But when you really think about it really deeply, within your mind, if you're afraid of something, it can paralyze you. Like, your life can stop because of it. And I got through it. I got some counselling and stuff like that. But if someone asked me today, like, well, what was the reason? I couldn't tell you. I was afraid. I was afraid to leave my house. I was just scared. And every time I had to push open the door to go outside to the garden, I was trembling. As part of my life, I just think, man, there is no joke about these things when people say they're afraid or they have some kind of phobia. As I said before, it can take over your life. And I've had friends that wanted to pursue stuff, do things with their life, but they've been hesitant to do so because of the fear of failing or not being good enough or not being enough. And when you think about it, we have everything, every resource, every opportunity to have a go at something. And I think within this culture, Instagram, Twitter, whatever you've got, society paints that success comes so quickly to people when actually there's a lot of groundwork going on. There's so many failures that happen before we get to our successes. And I wish we could change the culture of it being about instant gratitude or instant success to actually, you've got to do the grinding. And that could take a few years. It could take a few months. It could take forever until you get to that very goal. But in terms of fear, I don't know. It's irrational, absolutely. But I guess what are the tools to deal with our fears? How do we equip ourselves to, when we do want to pursue stuff? I'm not talking about your fears of like your spiders or the wasp, even though they are irrational. You're like 10 times bigger than the wasp. The wasp doesn't even know what's going on right now. It's getting beat down. It's a madness. But in terms of pursuing our dreams and wanting to talk to people, how do people do that? Does that make sense? Like, there's just so many layers to this, but yeah, I just wanted to know, like, in terms of people having fear, how do we encourage people to move past the fear and move into action when it comes to pursuing dreams, comes to wanting to do better for ourselves?
I think it's a layered answer in terms of, I think a lot of people, so I'll take the example of like I'm a celebrity, like, and take it back to like the bugs and spiders or like even the heights. Like, some people are petrified of stuff, and sometimes the best way to tackle them or to tackle that fear is by almost throwing them into the hot pan by saying, here's a cliff, abseil off it. Do you know what I mean? Like, this may help you get over your fear. And I think in some cases that works, but when you are talking about more emotional cases, so I can empathize with that in the sense of, when I was younger and I first started secondary school, I was bullied when I first started my first year because I was different.
Different in what way?
I think it just, I wasn't a stereotypical lad. I mean, I'm not now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't like football. Like, I liked art. I liked designing. Like, I just wouldn't, like, if anybody mentioned rugby and mud, I would run the other way. Listen, never would I ever. My parents said from day dot, even at Sarah, like, I can't stand sand. I can't stand anything like that. I can't stand, I just can't stand being untidy or unclean.
He takes a camping chair to the beach
on holiday.
So the sand doesn't touch it.
Yeah. Like, I bought a camping chair. I said, I'm not having this sand touch me. You two can sit on the floor, not me, God. But yeah, so I wasn't classed as like, you know, a lad, if that makes sense. And I suppose I friended a lot of females a lot quicker than I would males. So I was bullied, and it got to a point where I would be scared to go to, so I used to sometimes fake being ill to stop myself from going to school out of fear of being like bullied or, you know, seen as different. And I think it, for me, support network. And it's mad, but going back to a previous topic, the love from other people. It was the constant encouragement, because at the end of the day I had to go back to school. Do you know what I mean? So it was you're gonna get through this, like, you're okay. And I think it's the encouragement. Like, my parents didn't say like, oh well, start playing football, or you know, go and do rugby. They were like, be who you are and be proud of who you are. Like, God made you individual for a reason, and for that reason, do you know what I mean, you've got to give him glory. So go out and just be different. Like, not everybody's gonna like you, accept it. Do you know what I mean? But when you find your niche, you find your niche. And I think it was, I then kind of, throughout the whole like kind of school life, I then found myself in a very popular group, and then I thought to myself, I can't even like live up to that expectation, if you know what I mean. Like, the whole like Instagram thing, everyone was rolling with their Louis Vuitton bags, and I was just like, this is hard work, man. So then I kind of just came out of all of that, and I just thought, you know what, I'm just gonna be me. Like, I'm just gonna and I think that takes a lot of soul searching. Like, to overcome fears, you have to address them.
Absolutely.
You have to address them and almost look them face on and be like, right, I am scared of you, but you're not going to consume me, because if I keep doing this, it's just going to lead me down a darker road. And I think I had to almost say to myself, you know what, Josh, you are different, and you've got to just accept it. Like, if I had it my way back in those days, I think I would have almost just wished to be like everybody else. But I thought, well, I'm not, and trying to be like everybody else isn't going to make me happy. So I've just got to try and be me and hope that one day somebody accepts it. And I think out of that, and me becoming more confident in myself, I then started to find people that appreciated me for me. And I think in the sense of, I don't know, your scenario, or a scenario where, you know, you're emotionally dealing with fear and it's beyond the point of, like, you know, those rational, you know, smaller fears, if you want to put it like that. I think it's honestly soul searching, asking yourself tough questions, finding out who you are and why you're scared of these things, whether it be learned behaviors, whether it be an experience you've been through, and almost saying to yourself, I'm gonna get through this. Like, it's going to be difficult and I've got to face it head on, but I'm going to get through this. And I think every scenario is different. Everyone's issues are different. So it's hard to kind of give a generic answer for what somebody may be going through at that specific time. But I think support network, asking yourself some serious questions and kind of challenging yourself as well. Not necessarily being comfortable, stepping out of that comfort zone. At the end of the day, you had to step out the house. And you're here today. Do you know what I mean? If you continue to, I suppose, have lived like that, we wouldn't know you today. I wouldn't have the relationship I have with you now, Jill. Do you know what I mean? Because I just wouldn't know you like that. But I suppose you had to take that step out one day. And I think it's just deciding when you're going to take that step.
100%. I think you touched on something really important, because in terms of how do you tackle the fear, it's like identifying it and facing it head on. And I know that doesn't work for everybody, but I think sometimes I had a fear, and I feel like my fear, and it probably still is a fear of fear, if that makes sense. I'll get there. But just in terms of kind of identifying, okay, I'm scared of this thing, like it has some type of control over me. And what can I do? Because I'd say it was for about 3 or 4 years, I had a fear and I didn't even know what the fear was. And the fear was a fear of not being in control, which I think a lot of people have it. A lot of people go through it, but I didn't know what it was. It's like, I knew something wasn't right. I knew I didn't feel right, but I couldn't quite place what it was. And I remember there was a time when absolutely everything started spiraling out of control. If you want another story, ask me about 2018. But every single thing was spiraling out of control. And I was scared because it was spiraling out of control. But I was also scared because I was scared of being scared. And I think it's very important to identify that fear breeds fear. So like, it's very fueling. It's also very contagious. I think you'll find, say if there's one fearful person surrounded by 9 calm people, that fear could spread quicker than the calmness if you're not careful, or it can kind of be like a wave or a sea. And it's about being able to ground yourself, but grounding yourself in the right things. Because if you ground yourself in things or in people that evoke that fear, it will never end. It's going to be like a ripple and the wave keeps getting bigger. So I definitely agree with the support network, but also grounding yourself in something and really trying to help yourself through that by like having a positive grounding effect almost.
I can relate to that. The fear of not being in control. Yeah. It's definitely something that kind of like weighs in the back of your head. Definitely, like, could be in anything really. But like I think that's probably like what I was trying to figure out earlier. It's like just any situation where I'm not quite in control. I might be on a high top level where things are shaking. I'm like, oh, this is not quite my comfort zone. Yeah. Maybe it's just that, a fear in general of when I'm out of my comfort zone or out of control, where other elements are probably a lot stronger than my own abilities. It's probably where I get like, okay, this isn't really for me. So like you kind of run to what feels familiar. Like,
Yeah.
try and escape that.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to kind of identify fear in like just everyday things though. Like I think we avoid things, but you might not necessarily label that as a fear of something.
But then could you? Because I feel like you avoid it because you're fearful of what's to come if you pursue the way you don't like.
Yeah.
And I think, I suppose fear in a sense is almost just being out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Like, simple as, because as soon as you step out, you're fearful of what's to come.
You can't control it.
And because you can't control it. And I think, I think that kind of, it doesn't sum up everything, but I think, that includes a lot. Includes a lot. So, but fear is a hard one. It's a really hard one.
I think that's helped though because I wouldn't have seen it that way until you said it. Like actively avoiding something probably means there's an element of fear within it. Yeah. And even though you might not recognize it, you're making decisions every day to kind of stay away from something that you're afraid of. Yeah. Like every day there's decisions you make that you consciously, you might think, oh, that's just like regular. That's just what I do. But there might be a root in something else why you're making that decision. And that could be because of a fear of something. It could be because you're out of your comfort zone in that environment, or you're out of control in that situation. And kind of without like speaking about it that way, I would have never like thought, okay, let me address it that way instead of just seeing as just a regular kind of occurrence.
But I think it's good to say that as humans, we are going to fear things. It's natural to fear things. Like, do you know what I mean? I think it's when you do step out of that zone of comfort, like you are going to start, like your mind does play tricks on you. Like you second guess everything. Like that is natural. But I think it's, like you said, it's what you do with that or how you place it or how you act upon it, I think, which makes the difference. And I think if somebody is getting to a place where, you know, they're fearing something so much that it is paralyzing them, I think you almost need to stop yourself in that moment and ask yourself why that's happening and why it's, because I think pursuing that kind of that behavior is only going to lead to like more destruction to yourself. And if you feel as if you're going on that road, I think the best thing to do is find a support network or speak to people that, you know, can hear you out. And I think as well, like, you know what, funny you said about the whole like small fears. Like what small fears we might have, maybe big fears to other people as well. And I think whoever you are, if somebody comes to you with a fear, don't discredit it based on your experience of that thing. Because I think sometimes when we come to speak to people, it's like, do you know what I mean? Like, for example, I don't know, if you're not scared of spiders and I come to you, Aaron, and speak to you about spiders, you're like, why are you scared of spiders? Don't be so stupid. Well, to me, that's not stupid. Do you know what I mean? I'm actually genuinely scared. And I think you need to find people that are actually willing just to hear you out. I think that's really important. So I was going to ask, a lot of people say we're to fear God. In the context of like everything that we're speaking about, like, should we be fearing God?
I think it's a kind of different kind of fear though, isn't it? It's not the trembling and shaking to the point where you're just out of your mind. I think when we talk about fearing God, there's a reverence and humbleness to that, a recognition of who the creator is compared to fear, whereby we don't recognize anything because we're so confused and scared that we don't know our path or our way. But when I think about the fear of God, I think about the respect and the majesty of what he is. So in a sense, I like to replace the concept of fear of ultimate respect. Does that make sense? That's what it means to me anyway. I think it's a massive misconception about what fearing God looks like. And it's unfortunate because I think a lot of people think that means we hang our head low and we crawl on the floor and we're like, oh Lord, like it's some kind of puppet. He's not that at all. Well, not from my experience. I don't know other people's.
And dare I say, I feel like sometimes that's why people fear churches. Because there is a fear of judgment, like persecution, and they're just trying to seek God for who he is. But because, you know, there's this, you must be a standard, you must be a way. Like, I think people fear, and that's mad, you know. That is so crazy because how we act is a reflection to somebody else of who God is. And if they fear us or fear an organization or fear a church, what does that say about the God we serve or the person we are supposed to be glorifying? What reflection does that have of God to them? I think that's so important. And I think sometimes that's why people may come to churches and feel uncomfortable because, you know, are they actually fearful of being amongst a group of people that are supposed to be children of God or supposed to be, you know, God-fearing people? Do you know what I mean? Like, if somebody can't walk into a space and feel loved and feel like this is somewhere they can be comfortable in,
and be their authentic self.
What does that say to them about the God we serve? That they have to be conditioned to be a certain way. I think that's really important as well.
I think it reveals how we see God as well.
True.
Well,
So if we're supposed to be reflecting to other people how God is to us, and then they pick up from that it's very judgmental, they're scared to be in the situation, that is in turn how we see God. We just see him as a judge, someone who's, okay, oh, you did something wrong, he's coming to get you kind of thing. Like, oh, God's like after me. yeah. So that's something I've had to like unlearn as I've been growing up. I don't even know if it's, because again, it's like a learned behavior, but I don't think it's something that was specifically told to me to, like God's out to get you kind of thing. Don't mess up. Because if you mess up, you know, there's big problems for you. But just growing up in a church environment, that's how it seemed to me, as if you can't make mistakes, or if you do make mistakes, then your day's gonna go terrible. God's taking his hand off you. You're getting punished straight away. It's like, I shouldn't have done that, or I don't want to do that because, you know, something might mess up, or you hit something, you hurt yourself, and you say, you know, but that's probably because of this or because of that. And I was living a lot of my childhood with that kind of like action punishment type view of God, and that if I'm not like living up to a standard, he's like things are gonna start going, things are gonna start going terrible.
It's so harsh as well. Like how do you as a person function in that sort of attitude? Do you know what I mean? How would you function? Like, messed up today, messed up tomorrow. You just give up, wouldn't you?
I think you tiptoe around on eggshells. Like, I don't think you should fear God at all in that sense. Like, I love what you said, Jill. I think it's in terms of respect and reverence. And like, I kind of look at it in the way with parents as well. I wouldn't say I fear my parents, but if I did something wrong, I was fearful that I would get in trouble. And rightly so. If I go and play with the good china that they tell me not to touch, I'm fearful as to what would happen. But I think it's kind of the same with God. I think there should be an ultimate level of respect and reverence, but it shouldn't be that you're quaking and as soon as you've done something wrong, that's it. You're done. Because that's not the way God works. He works on the principles of love. And I think we've made like quite a few important points that if people come into church or come into a church environment or even come into contact with Christians outside of a church, and they're getting this portrayal that God is this big dictator, that he's going to punish you, we are almost teaching people to be fearful of something and not even giving the real truth or the full story. And I think you've got to be so careful with that. Like, we're breeding an unrealistic fear.
Absolutely. As you were talking, I was thinking, you know what? When Adam and Eve messed up and they were hiding in a bush or whatever they were doing, it's God that came to find them. He was like, what are you doing? What's going on here? Do you know what I mean? And if we take that same principle, when we mess up, he's waiting. He's like, yo, man, I know you messed up over there, but we need to talk about it. He's not the God that thinks, don't chat to me, please. We're not on them levels.
Of sins and whips and lashes that this person is going to get.
Do you know what I mean? He hasn't. He comes to find us at our most weakest. Do you know what I mean?
I think that I never even looked at the story that way, but that's like the first, like Adam and Eve messed up and they instantly feared God, hid away, covered themselves, and like didn't want to look at him, kind of thing, because they were afraid of what might happen. And I feel like we're still operating in that same situation, and God's probably still the same, looking, where are you? Like, where are you? I'm trying to like, I know what's happened. I knew it was going to happen. I'm trying to like make a way for this to be right, but you're hiding, you're running away, you're afraid.
Me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Glory God, I better go look at my life.
But yeah, I think it's a whole different topic, but understanding grace was what got me out of that kind of mindset.
Yeah.
Understanding that the love is there, and it's not action based. The grace isn't there because I'm an amazing person. He doesn't love me because I'm his favorite child or whatever. He has favor on all of us, but not because of what we do, just because of who he is.
Yeah. It's always about him as well.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I think it's like it's a different conversation, but that whole, like, it's not there's nothing I could do to like change what God feels, how he loves, and it's almost like I can control. Again, it's that control thing. Like, oh, if I do these things, I can control the outcome of everything. I control the outcome of my life. I control the outcome of my salvation. If I do these things, if I live this way, whereas that's not true.
That's not the gospel.
Yeah, that's not the gospel, for one. That's just not how life works. Two, like, even like, I think Proverbs or Ephesians, one of my favorite verses is just talking about how you can live your life perfectly, and things happen. Bad things happen to good people. Good things happen to bad people. It's not a action reward based system.
This is it. Like,
that's definitely not how the world is run. Even like the story of Job kind of is the same thing. Job was lived his life perfect. Calamities came, and people kind of use that as like God was testing him type of situation. But what I got from that is that no, Job was perfect, but that's not how the world is run. I think the lesson there is not, sometimes God's gonna like test you. It's that even though you might live this way, you can do what you feel is righteous. Bad things might still happen, but ultimately God is still in control of the situation. And regardless of what Job did, I feel like God would have still dealt with him the same way. And it's kind of just trying to unlearn those kind of mindset that God is out to punish you. You need to control yourself, otherwise he's gonna like disown you, kind of thing. And again, like you're saying, I feel like that's what we're teaching younger children in the church. That's what we're teaching people that are outside the church. That's how the church is built, on this kind of false perspective that everything has to be perfect. If people mess up, it's instant. It's instant judgment. It's, this is so and so's son. You hear about so and so's daughter, and it's like almost instant judgment. But I feel like, again, that's because there's a breakdown in how we see the gospel, how we see grace, how we actually do view God. It might be that a vast majority of people have learned that same fear, that kind of fear of God's judgment, but not in the term of respect and kind of reverence for who he is, but in the negative way. And that's just what keeps getting looped and repeated and taught to other people.
I agree. And that's not to say actions don't have consequences either.
Not at all.
Like, we do bad things, there most likely will be consequences to that. Do you know what I mean? It's just, it shouldn't be. Do you know what I mean? Every move we make in life, do you know what I mean? Like, God is there with a notepad and a whip ready to lash us in the head if we do something wrong. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just don't think it's like that. And I think, no matter, in every aspect of life, whether it be like religious, day to day, we should just, I don't know, try not to walk in fear, try not to live in fear. Just live, live, enjoy it, and learn in the times when things do go wrong.
And never again will I trust you. I'm tired of fighting, it's been way